Hey y'all. I wanted to hop on here and talk a little bit about my circle of concern versus my circle of influence. And my circle of concern, it's big. It's got everything in it. What's going to happen to my descendants? What's going to happen to the next few generations? Is there going to be housing? Is there going to be what's the financial situation going to look like? What is the food chain? How is it going to look in the future? Are there going to be chemicals sprayed on everything we purchase to eat, to ingest into our bodies? How does elderly care look in the future? What about the skills that our ancestors had that kept them alive through all the hard times? Those are things in my circle of concern. My circle of influence, however, is much smaller. And my circle of influence is things that I directly influence. My family, my coworkers, people I interact with on a daily, and people that I associate with. Those are things that are in my circle of influence. And by really looking at my circle of influence and realizing what has taken place there, it's been very, very eye-opening. As I've mentioned, I grew up for several years of my life in the FLDS. And at one point in time, almost all of the fathers and the husbands were sent away. They were told to go and repent from a distance and to leave their families, for their families did not belong to them anyway. They belonged to the priesthood, and the priesthood would take care of them. Well, that was very, very off from what it actually was. It was actually more like being thrown to the wolves. However, I digress. Coming back to my circle of influence, after I had been separated from my husband for 3 years, we made the decision that he would come back home. And upon making that decision, I knew I would be shunned. I knew I would be cut off from everybody that I knew and loved. I knew there would be no association whatsoever. I would not be allowed to participate in any of the activities. I would not be allowed to receive food how we were getting it. I would literally be on my own. And I'll tell you, it was the hardest decision I ever made in my entire life. To know that I was making this decision that was going to impact all of my children, my entire family. And many of these children thought that they were going to go to hell for this decision because their dad came back home to take care of us and provide for us and to do the things that a father does. It was a very, very challenging time for us. And there was another family that was living with us at the time that when my husband came back, the very next day they moved out. They were gone, cleaned out, walked away. And that was how it happened. If anyone chose opposite of what the priesthood said, if you even questioned what they said, you were shunned. And I heard later that my name was said over the pulpit, that I was a very wicked, evil person and to shun me severely. And I cannot hold this against anyone because I know the teachings that they were given. If someone turns against this priesthood, they are turning against God, and it is your duty to shun them. And if there is another person that sees you not shunning, it is their job to report that the person they saw was not shunning someone like me, who is now considered an apostate. So several years later, actually it was just probably a year ago, I was doing a therapy session and a photo fell down. And this photo was of me with my newborn son. And it was taken just a couple weeks after his father was sent away. And this photo brought up a lot of emotion. And my therapist walked me through this step by step. And all of the memories of that time came washing over me. And it had taken so long for me to allow myself to feel the hurt and to feel the pain and betrayal from everything that I had known to absolutely nothing, to being all on my own. I had analyzed a lot of the things that were taking place, and the things that were being stripped from us was the critical thinking skills, our decision-making skills, any kind of healthy coping mechanisms or anger management, clear down to just basic old decision-making. And it was so detrimental, and I didn't like the path that we were going on at the time. It was so, I don't even know how to put words to it. But if you can imagine your loved ones not knowing if they're doing okay, not knowing if they're surviving, not knowing any of the things that are going on, and you cannot reach out to them, you can't even check on them because they're paying for a sin, and this is God's way of their repayment. All of it is so messed up that it is so hard to even fathom that truly went on. But it did. And it is no wonder to me why we have such a high suicide rate of people that came from this community. However, I come back to my circle of influence. And because I stood up and made that choice, it made it so my children did not have to deal with and go through some of the terrible, horrible things that were taking place. And every one of the children in my care are very strong, very stable. They are very good people in whatever area they've chosen to go. And when we come together as a family, there is so much love and there's so much gratitude. I have to not wonder what would have happened had I not made that decision, had I not been willing to take charge of my circle of influence. If I would have allowed for all the things that we were being taught to really come to me in my heart, and that's what I would teach my children, but I couldn't. I could not teach them things that were wrong to me. And the other point I wanted to put out there is it took me well over 2 years to be able to hold my head up and look at people. Even stepping outside my front door, I couldn't look at people. I didn't want anybody to see me. I didn't want to feel the shame and the guilt that was put on all of us. And I didn't want to feel the betrayal in my soul that I was feeling for these leaders who had so horribly, horribly betrayed us. And for anyone out there, if you are dealing with this, please reach out to someone. Please get some help. Please know you are not alone. The shunning is so real, and it is such a massive controller. And for the last thing I want to say is your circle of influence has impact on others. And you never know who you are impacting and what kind of a change it is going to make in someone else's lives. So thank you all for listening, and we will see you again tomorrow.